Rhaenyra just lost her son in the most brutal way possible, and the trailer for episode 2 shows her reaction in a way that should genuinely scare every single person on the green side. Jace is dead. His dragon went down into the water at the Battle of the Gullet. Arrows hit him from every direction, and the people who killed him cheered while it happened. That alone would break most people. But what this trailer reveals is that Rhaenyra is not going to break. She is going to change into something far more dangerous than the queen we have known so far. Baela locked her in her room to stop her from flying into that battle herself, and now Rhaenyra has to live with the fact that she was helpless while her own son was dying. Daemon is already pushing her to use that pain instead of drowning in it. Otto Hightower's nephew is openly calling her weak and unfit to rule. Aegon is escaping his own captivity with revenge on his mind. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, King's Landing itself is about to fall. Episode 2 lands this Sunday, June 28th, and this trailer just told us exactly how bloody that episode is going to be. Let's go through it. The trailer opens right in the aftermath of the Battle of the Gullet, and the first thing we see is the damage Jace's death has already done to everyone around Rhaenyra. We see Baela flying away from the wreckage, and her face alone tells us how deeply this loss is going to be felt. She watched the person she loved slowly die, his dragon disappearing beneath the water, while he was struck with arrow after arrow, and the people on the other side cheered while it happened. That is the kind of death that does not just create grief, it creates blame, and there is a real chance Baela ends up blaming Rhaenyra for flying into that battle on an untrained dragon. A decision that may have distracted Jace at the exact moment he needed to be focused. As the music in this trailer builds toward its climax, and as we see the burning wreckage of dragonfire still settling over the water, Rhaenyra's voice suddenly cuts through everything. She says, "Jace, what have you done?" And this line alone raises one of the biggest questions of the entire trailer. Is she speaking directly to Rhaenyra, with a guilty, almost accusing tone aimed at the person she may hold responsible? Or is she standing over her son's body, asking that question to a boy who can no longer answer her? Either way, this line tells us something critical about how this death is going to affect Rhaenyra differently than anything she has experienced before. When Lucerys died, that loss nearly destroyed her from the inside. She fell into a depression so deep that she barely seemed present in her own story for episodes at a time. But Jace's death is not going to send her down that same road. The evidence in this trailer points to something far more dangerous. Instead of grief turning inward, this time it turns outward, into anger, into rage, and into a hunger for revenge that this version of Rhaenyra has never shown before. We then get a shot of bodies from the battle still floating in the sea, and among them, Lord Corlys Velaryon washes up onto the shore. The sea snake is alive. He survived his fight with Aemon, and that alone is going to matter enormously for what comes next, because Corlys is one of the few people left who can offer Rhaenyra both wisdom and naval power at a moment when she desperately needs both. Over this same shot, we hear Rhaenyra's voice again, distraught, asking, "How could you?" And once again, the question is who she is actually speaking to. It could still be Jace's body. It could be Rhaenyra. It could even be the Queen's Guard, the men who followed Jace's orders and locked Rhaenyra away in her room, leaving her completely helpless while her son rode into a battle he never should have fought alone. We then cut to Rhaenyra after she lands with Sheepstealer, and her expression says everything words could not. She knows the responsibility for what happened to Jace is going to land on her shoulders, and she knows Rhaenyra is the one who will decide what that responsibility costs her. The most likely outcome is that Rhaenyra wants her punished by death for what happened, but Daemon may be the one who steps in to stop that, because he understands something Rhaenyra does not want to admit yet. Rhaenyra's anger, properly aimed, could be far more useful pointed at the actual enemy than wasted on revenge against her own side. And that brings us to the moment in this trailer that might matter more than any other, because what Daemon says next to a grieving Rhaenyra is not just comfort. It is a calculated push toward war. And once you hear what he actually says to her, you will understand exactly why King's Landing should be terrified of what comes next. What Daemon says to Rhaenyra in this moment is not just an attempt to comfort a grieving mother. It is something far more calculated. And once you understand Daemon's character, that calculation becomes obvious. As Rhaenyra cries into the bed, completely broken by what happened to her son, Daemon leans in and asks her, "Will you let him die in vain?" That single line is doing two things at once. On the surface, it sounds like a husband trying to pull his wife out of despair. But underneath that, Daemon is using Jace's death as leverage to push Rhaenyra back into the fight before grief has the chance to swallow her the way it did after Lucerys. Daemon has always loved battle. He has always wanted Rhaenyra to take the throne that he believes is rightfully hers. And now, he has the perfect emotional weapon to make sure she does not retreat into mourning the way she did before. The evidence strongly suggests that Daemon becomes one of the central reasons Rhaenyra's entire mental state shifts in this episode, moving away from sorrow and directly into a colder, angrier version of herself that the show has never given us until now. From here, the trailer jumps to Otto Hightower's nephew, and he says something that should make every viewer's stomach turn. He calls Rhaenyra weak and unsuited to rule, and the most likely explanation is that he is saying this directly to either Alicent or her son Aemond, reinforcing exactly the kind of dismissive contempt the Greens have had for Rhaenyra since the very beginning. This line is immediately followed by a shot of him standing opposed on a battlefield against what looks like Daemon Targaryen himself. Now here is where things get interesting, because in the books, these two men never actually meet on the battlefield. They fight in completely different campaigns. So either the show is taking a deliberate departure from the source material, or this is clever editing designed to make us believe a confrontation is coming when it might not happen exactly the way the trailer implies. Based on Rhodey the Ruin appearing later in this same trailer, the most logical conclusion is that this battlefield we are looking at is actually the Battle of Tumbleton, which would mean Daemon and this Hightower nephew are not actually opposing each other directly in that specific moment. Daemon then says, "You will have justice," a line that confirms exactly how far he is willing to go to make sure Rhaenyra sits on the Iron Throne, no matter the cost. Rhaenyra's response is one of the most quietly devastating lines in the entire trailer. She says, "I will never have justice, but what crumbs of it I snatch, I will devour." Sit with that for a second, because it tells you everything about where her head is right now. Even if she wins, even if she takes the throne and watches every enemy responsible for Jace's death fall in front of her, it will never actually feel like justice, because the only thing that would have made this right was having her children alive beside her, and two of them are already gone. The throne is no longer about ruling for her. It is about whatever small piece of vengeance she can physically hold on to. From here, we cut to Otto's nephew again, and he says, "We will fight on our own terms. My purpose is to restore the rightful line to the Iron Throne." This line makes his entire motivation completely clear. He is not fighting for peace. He is fighting to permanently secure the Hightower bloodline's grip on the throne. And right now, he commands the largest standing army left on the continent. That is exactly why we see him marching toward King's Landing throughout this trailer, making sure every single person in his path either swears loyalty to King Aemond or gets met with steel instead. And then Aemond himself appears, saying the line that might be the most chilling moment in the entire trailer. He says, "Rhaenyra is no queen. A new dawn is coming and she will certainly fail." Immediately after that line, we cut to Alicent standing above the dragon pit in King's Landing, and the fear on her face says everything words could not. She wanted peace. She has seen enough suffering to want this entire war to end. But the way she is looking out over that dragon pit tells us she already knows peace is no longer possible, and that far more blood is going to be spilled before any of this is finished. And just when you think the trailer has shown you the worst of it, it cuts straight to Aegon escaping his captors with Larys Strong at his side. And what Aegon says next about his own brother might be the most dangerous promise made in this entire preview.